Hi everybody, Eric Brown again here with MOBO-Media. Hey, I thought I'd have a real candid conversation with my people, the black community. I don't claim to be any expert on this subject, but I do have credentials and I'll share with you later on it. And it's the subject of mental health. Mental health is something, it's a stigma within the black community. It's a stigma as a whole. It used to be more so. But for black folks, mental health was it was a no-no. It was back in the day, you didn't go to a shrink or, psych or anything like that, man. You just kind of, you talk things through, you wait it out, you had your stiff drink or, what have you, man. And if need be, you have people in the family kind of get behind you, man, and lift you back up and get you back on your feet. But oftentimes you need a high level of care than just a good pat on the back. And in the black community, mental health has been a stigma for a long time. It's also a stigma in other communities too, don't get me wrong. But for in the black communities, I think it's so important that we recognize some of the things we deal with specifically as black people. But, one thing to keep in mind, we as a people, we deal with trauma on top of trauma, on top of trauma, on top of trauma. No other race of people have had to deal with the type of traumas we've had to deal with. And nothing against those folks that, will argue that the Holocaust, well, it was the same thing. Well, I respectfully disagree. And until you wear this skin, then don't have a conversation with me on that. So, I don't know, man. It's a touchy subject, you know what I'm saying? I have my own experiences with mental health, and I go ahead and kind of delve into that. So I've always been a fan of studying people, man, for many years. So when I went into the Air Force, what I did when I was young, man, I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do, man, as far as career-wise. But I know I had to go to school. And I'll talk later in another video about how that came about. I know I had to go to school. So I never forget, man, I went to like the education office, man, and you talk to a counselor, and she basically said, whenever you figure out what you want to do, what kind of degree you want to get, you come back and talk to me. I never forget, on the way out, man, there was a brochure stand, man. I'm looking at the brochure stand, and one of the brochures, the brochure stand had brochures about the type of degrees, not just the majors, but the minor degrees. And so I never forget, the one that caught my attention was psychology, with the minor in business management. And so I ended up getting a degree in psychology, getting an undergrad in psychology, started my master's degree, but held off on that because I actually ended up working in a psychology clinic, military mental health. So after 15 years of working hardcore combat, flight line, bombs, missiles, you name it, I said, you know what? I want to change jobs. I want to go into mental health. And I was a perfect candidate because I had already been through combat and trauma and those sorts of things. So I was in the perfect position to understand what it felt like, what it looked like, what it tasted like, what it sounded like. You know what I'm saying? So got accepted into a mental health program. Interesting thing is I came in at a higher rank than is normal. You know what I'm saying? I had already been in the Air Force 15 years. But the positive part about that is I had already got my degree in psychology. So I was already working towards psychology before I tried to change jobs in psychology. So working in the Air Force mental health was interesting because you see people with different backgrounds, different jobs coming into the clinic. A lot of times the professionals will come to me because they know I've been out there and I know exactly the type of stresses or the traumas that folks are going through. So I would see the folks first before handing them off to them. And this is where it becomes interesting because a lot of times I would notice how, some of the black Air Force members were treated a little differently than white Air Force members, especially when it came to things like prescribing psychotropic medications. They were quick to give young black folks these psychotropic medications. And I ended up one day saying, you know what, enough is enough. I'm gonna put my foot down. So I never forget, man, the psychiatrist is the only one that can actually prescribe medication. Psychologists can recommend it, social worker can recommend it, but the psychiatrist is the one that writes the script. You know what I'm saying? Psychologists may be able to write script for some things. I know psych nurses can also write scripts. So for those out there that want to challenge me on that, I I'm out of military mental health now, and so it's been a while, but I still keep up with the Bible, DSM-4. Oh, I'm not behind. Oh, and I got the DSM-5 too. So if y'all don't know what that means, these are the actual Bibles for the world of psychology. Now, let me explain something to you about the world of psychology and these so-called psychology Bibles. No respect to the Christian faith. The field of psychology was not constructed for us, okay? So some of the methodology and some of the treatment recommendations they have were not meant for us. And I'll give you an example. I heard a psychologist tell me one day, they talked about how you put two questions in front of two different individuals, you get different answers. You put a question, have you ever been in trauma in front of a white person? They'll say yes or no, and it'll be factual, you know what I'm saying? Either you have or you haven't. You put it in front of a black person, a lot of times they have been through the trauma, but they'll still put no because they don't know it is trauma. So the psychologist caught this because the question talked about trauma. Have you ever had any trauma, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The young black man said no. Well, going on down some of the other questions, there was a question about gunfire. Have you ever been around gunfire? Young man says yes. So when the psychologist started to inquire about this, what she found was that he had been traumatized, been exposed to trauma, but it become normalized in the black community. It's normalized for us. You know what I'm saying? I can go real deep with this, man. Dr. Francis Cress Welding. I can go deep with it. You know what I'm saying? There are reasons behind a lot of the situation we find ourselves in today. There's a thing called post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is very common in the psych world for those folks that have been exposed to traumas. But there's also something called post-traumatic slave syndrome. It's because we've never been able or given the opportunity to actually, heal from slavery. You know what I'm saying? There was no mental health, none of that stuff, man. And you got to imagine some of the things that were done to us as a people. There were no opportunities to, again, be treated for it. And we just kind of kept moving. For us, it made us stronger. But in some respects, it also made us weaker. And there are some of us that normalize having mental health issues. And I will tell you, it's not normal. So if you feel the need, talk to somebody as a minimum. I'm not saying go run to a psych clinic, a psych ward, anything like that, but talk to somebody. Don't just internalize. Don't keep it in. Because the more you keep things in, it just increases. It doesn't go anywhere. It's got to release like energy, man, like negative energy. It's got to release it. So the longer you hold it in, you just worn yourself down and you start seeing it on your face and, bags and wrinkles and wondering why your health is declining, all this type of stuff. It's because you're holding these thoughts in or these feelings in. So again, blacks and mental health is something that, I've struggled with. When I say blacks, I'm talking about the black community. I struggled with it because of the way that mental health was structured and designed. Again, it wasn't necessarily meant for us, so the treatment doesn't fit us, even though they try to force it down our throats. It's almost like putting a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't work. But, hopefully, there will be more African Americans or blacks that get into psychology and psychiatry and social work. Because I think our story needs to be told and our story needs to be considered when you're talking about giving us diagnoses or trying to shove psychotropic medications down our throats. I'll tell you right now, don't ever let anybody do that to you unless it's absolutely necessary, because there are massive profits being made off these psychotropic meds. And America is the most medicated nation on earth. Y'all need to understand that. The most medicated nation on earth. That's telling right there. That lets you know that something's wrong with that picture. At the end of the day, it's all about the almighty dollar. About the mighty dollar. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good clinicians out there that really have your best interest at heart. But as a whole, man, the psych world right now, man, it's not for us. It's not structured for us. And so kudos to the black psychologists, the black social workers, the black psychiatrists who are telling our stories, who considering our side of life. When you start sitting in front of patients who come in distress, So, I talk more about this, about Black mental health and why it's important for us to recognize it. And I say, again, I'm going to say Black mental health because it's compounded. It's not like normal mental health. Ours is compounded. It's got layers to it, man. Years and years of layers. You know what I'm saying? And the only way to get to the root of it is try to pull some of those layers back. And for me, this is where it kind of delves into education, the educational system, the fact they're trying to keep our education from us and really what happened to us from us and the trauma from us. But then you go into any clinical setting, psychiatry or psychology, they have treatments where they actually, for you to be treated for the trauma, you have to relive the trauma over and over again. Can you imagine them having us do that? As Blacks, reliving the trauma that we went through slavery. Think about that. So there's no treatment for us in essence. There is, but only our folks know what it is. And so I encourage folks to, try to get into the field and learn more about psychology, social work, and psychiatry for the betterment of our people. And so, I don't mean to be divisive with that. That is my truth. I know what I know. I see what I've seen. I've experienced what I've experienced. These were not intended for us. Nah. Not one bit. Y'all take care, Eric Brown.